Edward Joseph Cannon. I am an SES with the Navy. You learn some life lessons and you have preferences as far as where you want to live. But when I first went over to Naples, I was told this is where sometimes you listen with advice, but maybe at that time I maybe shouldn't have taken the advice. I was told, Ed, especially since you're young, you probably want to live amongst a bunch of Americans. That way you'll feel comfortable. Well, in hindsight, I went overseas to be part of the culture and the community, and probably should have from the get-go lived more, quote, out in town. So I lived in an area that at that time was known as kind of Little America, but it was also known, and this is the sad part, but I've learned to roll with the punches, but our house was broken in twice, our car was broken in twice, and this was in Naples, because they knew the American community, like clockwork, would go to work, wouldn't be home for 8 hours. The Italian community, especially in some areas, you have the extended family living in the houses. It's a whole different environment, and unfortunately there are pockets of poverty there. So we as Americans were a little bit of a target. So I wound up talking to someone and suggested a new place to move to. So I moved to another neighborhood that was predominantly Italians. We had a couple NATO neighbors, a French family next to us. The chaplain lived down the street from us a little bit, but for the most part they were Italians that were embedded in the community. Gave me a much better experience, also much safer. So fast forward to when I went back to Naples the second time. I wound up living in a little small, called it an apartment complex. It was basically a large, very large house that somewhere through the years had been compartmentalized into a couple apartments. So I was the lone American. My wife and I were the lone Americans living there. My landlord lived right downstairs, and I was part of that community. We could walk to the local shop to buy your local groceries. The guy that ran the fruit and vegetable truck drove right by our house, and for €2 you could get a little bag of enough veggies for the day, enough tomatoes and everything. So that house, also since I was more senior, I had a higher housing allowance. So that house overlooked, I could see Vesuvius from around the corner of my house. You could see Sorrento, so it was just a beautiful view, and we could walk down the hill about a quarter of a mile and be right there on the water and see the little boats coming by, and in the distance you could see the cruise ships going by. So just a beautiful environment. When I was in Naples the first time, my housing allowance wasn't as large because I was a much more junior, but still very, very nice, comfortable house. Besides the visitors that I didn't want coming in my house twice, but even there, it was a nice house. The landlord was great, and the second house we moved in would be a townhouse. Actually, would look a lot like an American townhouse, just a few rows of houses.